go through all their information in relation to all the projects. So I'll start. If you could put your cameras, turn your cameras off and put yourself on mute, that would be great. Thank you. So just to start off with, I'm Sukvir Kaur Dillon. I'm one of the 3 consultant social workers with the West Midlands Teaching Partnership. And I want to welcome you to one of our sessions during our practice week, and today is our last day, and it's been going very well and everyone's thoroughly enjoyed the sessions, and as I'm sure that you guys will today enjoy this session. So just to give you a little bit of information about the West Midlands Teaching Partnership, some of you may be aware of the West Midlands Teaching Partnership, some of you may not be, but we're one of 23 accredited social work teaching partnerships, which are funded actually by the Department of Education, and the aim is to strengthen the quality of social work education and social work practice through teaching partnerships. And we work with a number of practitioners across the region, senior managers, academics, researchers, and those that are experts by experience, really to really improve the work that we do in terms of practice and within social work education as well. Like I've said before, if you can just turn your cameras off and put yourselves on mute. You can also put on captions if you wish to do so, and the captions you can find if you look at the top bar next to the chat box. There's 3 dots. If you click on that, there's actually an option just to put captions on if you require them. They're not always accurate, but if you do need them, please put them on. Okay, so in terms of the session today, it will be recorded. So just to make you aware that we are going to be recording this session, and the recording has started now. We will be sharing this as a bit of a post-training resource for those individuals that haven't been able to attend today. Okay, so I would like to introduce today's session, which is on Mend the Gap. We will have our keynote speaker, Albert Moylan, who will start the session off by explaining to you a little bit about what Mend the Gap is and what that means. And then we will be speaking with 5 of our projects Mend the Gaps that took place within the region last year. But what I'll do is, first of all, I'll hand it over to Albert just to start us off with the session and just to explain to us a little bit about Mend the Gap. So Albert, over to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Sukvir.
You're welcome.
Would you like me to start the keynote now?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Albert. Those of you who know me well will know that I am an optimist by nature. I have personal and direct lived experience of poverty, of loss, unemployment, being an immigrant, and acting as a carer for a family member. I have experience of being a social work student, a social worker, and being a teacher of social work students and qualified social workers. However, I have no direct personal experience of receiving social work services. I am currently a visiting lecturer at Birmingham City University. I would like us to begin with a minute's silence in solidarity with all families who have lost somebody during COVID-19. I would like us to extend this unanimity to all families, in all villages, in all towns, in all countries, and in all continents around the world. And if we wish our fellow human beings anything, perhaps that should include health and peace. And if you bear with me for a moment, I'm going to put a caption up. And then I will give you the time to start our minute of solidarity in silence. So just bear with me. So we shall begin our minute's silence in solidarity with people around the world who have lost somebody due to COVID-19 now. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, everybody. I will now continue with the main presentation. If you would like to use the chat function as we move through to send me a comment or to ask me a question, please do so. And then later today, I will respond to any comments or questions that you raise. In line with the value base of social work, regardless of their identity or geographical location, every human being is seen as equally important, and we stand in solidarity with them if they experience a significant problem, including any form of inequality or injustice. The people of Myanmar, the Uyghur community of China, and the growing numbers of children who live in absolute and relative poverty in the UK immediately come to mind. If you look up solidarity, you will find that it means unity of feeling or action. It also means mutual support with a specific group. Therefore, when thinking about solidarity, the key words to help us remember and understand are unity and mutual support. But what do we mean by gaps? One thing is certain: we are all human beings and therefore have many commonalities and common experiences. For example, we can all experience the positives of satisfaction and success, or the difficulties of loss and hunger. However, when we drill down to the detail, our life experiences, our views, our unique personalities are all different. And in any major discussion, despite some general broad consensus, there would undoubtedly be some gaps between us as distinct individuals, and perhaps also as members of diverse cultural, ethnic, and social groups. Gaps could be described as variances, mismatches, disparities, even inequalities and injustices. We know from research that certain groups are more likely to experience inequalities and injustices in the UK. If you are labelled as disabled, you are less likely to be employed or to have equal access to education, community resources, or leisure facilities when compared to somebody who is not labelled as disabled. If you are female, you are more likely to experience domestic abuse or sexual abuse than if you are male. If you identify as lesbian or gay at primary or secondary school, you are far more likely to experience bullying than if you identify or present as heterosexual. And as we all know too well, if you are black, you are more likely to be sectioned, forcibly restrained and treated under the Mental Health Act, stopped and searched by the police, or treated more harshly within the criminal justice system. There are many, many other disadvantaged groups, and it is only because of time constraints today that I have not specifically acknowledged or named all of them. Above all, these groups I have mentioned could be described as systematically disadvantaged in some way. And these relative systematic disadvantages could be described as gaps. Many people in these deprived groups qualify and need support from social services, and they become officially known or labeled as service users or carers. And there are less talked about but important gaps. There are gaps between the experiences, the views, the rights, the needs, and the wants of service users and carers, and the interrelated policies, perspectives, understanding, and approaches of those professionals and organizations tasked with responding to and meeting their needs, including social workers, social work educators, social work students, policymakers, researchers, universities, and of course, employer organizations. There are gaps between social workers and the people we serve. There are gaps between social work education and social work practice. There are gaps between social work academics and social work students. Gaps can include, and they can be caused by, things like inadequate knowledge or lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, inadequate or lack of resources and skills. They can be caused by prejudices. They can be caused by communication and language barriers. They can be caused by different perspectives on social issues and problems, or even unhelpful laws, policies, and procedures, or by institutional hierarchies. Fundamentally, these gaps can result in less effective social work education and less effective social work practice. Gaps in social work practice and social work education, they always exist in a context. And within local authority social work, gaps with citizens can appear due to significant government underfunding or due to the imposition or favouring of a narrow range of models of working or a narrow range of theoretical approaches. Perhaps they can also exist alongside strict employer policies and procedures. And whilst there are many examples of brilliant social workers being able to negotiate this difficult terrain, the outcome of this context is that it may result in a social work practice that is experienced by some citizens as distant, overpowering, less caring, bureaucratic, and inflexible. Within universities and within the context of HEIs, the context within which social work education takes place is increasingly one of extreme marketization, one where the university is unequivocally a business and the student is a paying customer or consumer of education. The outcome of this is a social work education environment where recruitment, retention, progression, high pass rates, and student satisfaction can sometimes take precedence over more fundamental issues of quality assurance. Uncovering, revealing, critically exploring with an open mind, and responding to this contextual knowledge is essential if we are to work together to mend the gaps. So, what are some of the fundamental causes of these gaps, and how might they be addressed? The first main cause is a combination of power and social inequality. The importance of power and inequality can be seen as a major theme within the social sciences. One social scientist who has been internationally recognized and significantly debated is Charles Tilly. In his book, Durable Inequality, he argues that subordinated groups adjust their lives to the present circumstances, and by doing this, social power and organizational structures are copied and spread. Tilly recognizes a number of mechanisms that maintain or contribute to social inequality. A fundamental problem is that people are often categorized or classified into different groups, and they are grouped in binary pairs as if they were opposites. Tilly gives several examples, for instance, women and men, black people and white people, people who are Muslims and people who are non-Muslims, people who are able-bodied and people who are so-called disabled. A terrible problem in our society, that word, which we must challenge. One group is seen and treated as more powerful, more valued and advantaged, and the other as less powerful, less valued and disadvantaged. And the danger of developing such categorical or definite pairs is that they are seen as opposites in some form of conflict, and fundamentally different from one another, with one often seen as more powerful and more legitimate than the other. This becomes an accepted norm, deeply learned and transferred across time, cultures, and organizations. In social work practice, social workers and service users can be treated and seen as opposite pairs. In the same way, social work academics and social work students, even social work practitioners and social work students, and perhaps even social work students and service users. How we view and think about different people based on their social or role identity can be problematic. Holland and Jewell take this further by arguing that when the gaps are clearly marked between these binary pairs, practice is often characterized by mutual prejudices, that is, prejudices going in both directions. And this can lead to an arrangement and a practice that reproduces inequality rather than challenging it. Whatever the organization is, as small as a household, medium-sized like a university or a local authority, or as large as a government, the resulting relationship of inequality persists because parties on both sides of the categorical divide come to accept and depend on that solution, despite its drawbacks. Where this happens, we have built in Tilly's durable inequality. And this type of social inequality is hard to change. Another major underlying or fundamental cause of gaps is how social work education, social work practice, and social policy are organized. They are mostly characterized by separation and distance between the main groups: academics, practitioners, policymakers, and regulators, who work in separate organizations with separate goals. Service users and carers are traditionally very distant and separate members of the wider community, and it is highly problematic that they are fundamentally seen as receivers of services. Despite some notable exceptions, some in our region here, citizens with lived experience of social work are still mostly excluded or only tokenly involved in practice agencies, universities, and government policy-making forums. In order to make a change, as part of a strategy to help mend the gaps in social work practice and social work education, a mind shift is not enough. Tilly's answer is that we need to organise our way of work in a different way. Therefore, we need to challenge the gaps by changing the way social work and social work education are organised. We need to reduce distances between all stakeholders by coming closer together. We also need to be aware of and somehow change how we view the categorical binary pairs that we build into our reports, our lectures, our projects, and everything that we create. We need to reflect deeply on any prejudices that we may have and challenge how different groups are viewed. But even this is not enough. We must ensure that there is recognition. Recognizing and altering the power imbalance between categorical pairs is crucial. But giving an individual or a group recognition, that means appreciation and respect, will also help to mend the gaps between social work professionals and service users or carers. The German philosopher Axel Honneth is one of several social scientists who have drawn attention to the importance of recognition. The basic idea is that people, in order to develop a positive relationship with themselves, must acknowledge several kinds of recognition from others. And a positive relationship with oneself is, in Honneth's understanding, a crucial foundation for individual self-realization, or to put it another way, a crucial base for individual self-empowerment. Gaps often cause mutual misrecognition, that is, lack of appreciation and respect between people with two different roles or two different identities, with that lack of recognition going in both directions. This raises important questions for social work practice and education. How can we develop mutual recognition, mutual acknowledgement, mutual appreciation, and mutual respect between service users or carers and social workers? How can we develop mutual recognition between social work academics and social work students, and between social work academics and social work practitioners? One way is by having common goals. This can be seen as a strategy for reducing the gaps between apparently opposite groups in social work practice. As parties come together to engage in a common cause, new important social bonds develop. This can contribute to fewer gaps and an increased sense of mutual recognition, mutual appreciation, and mutual respect. Tilly's and Honneth's ideas are relevant when attempts are made to mend the gaps in social work practice and social work education. But how can we find a new way of working that includes all of the following? A way of working that includes changing our mindset about people who may be seen as opposites. A way of working which means organizing ourselves differently. A way of working which involves bringing stakeholders together in a way that involves working together, hopefully in solidarity, on common goals. A way of working that involves bringing stakeholders together in a way that promotes mutual recognition. Part of the answer is by embracing and using co-production. This concept and approach is starting to be widely used. Co-production can be defined as working together with people as equal partners in design, delivery, and review. And the Social Care Institute for Excellence suggests that for real, true co-production to be in place, it needs to be based on 4 key principles. Firstly, equality. No one group or person must be seen or treated as more important than another. Everyone must be seen to have skills, knowledge, abilities, and other assets to bring to the process. Second principle, diversity. Co-production should be inclusive of all communities and all groups. Third principle, accessibility. That is about ensuring that everyone has the same opportunity to take part in an activity fully in a way that suits them. Fourth principle, reciprocity. Ensuring that people receive something back for putting something in. Surely, service users and carers are not just consumers of services, conceived and delivered by professional groups, employers, and government. The invitation to service users and carers to be active change agents, not just passive recipients of services, must be considered to be the forgotten engine of change that could make the difference between systems working and systems failing. So how do we bring it all together? What mechanism, what approach do we need? What about a mend the gap approach? Mend the gap is an innovative and creative approach to achieving new learning and change that can emerge from groups of citizens with experience-based knowledge and professionals coming together in projects to share their experiences, their knowledge, and their skills. It centrally acknowledges direct experience as a valuable source of knowledge and involves service users and carers equally as co-producers in education and research. Ultimately, it is about changing social work practice to be more effective in supporting and empowering marginalised groups in society. It is relatively new to England, with the first gap mending project taking place in the Northeast in 2015. It has its origins in Europe in 2005, at the School of Social Work at Lund University in Sweden, and it grew out of the value of involving people with lived experience of social problems and people with lived experience of social work in social work education. In 2011, Shaping Our Lives UK, who took the lead in England, and together with Lund University in Sweden and Lillehammer University in Norway, they began the international Power Us network. This is an international network of teachers and researchers from schools of social work and service user organizations, and it now operates in over 17 countries around the world. It was Power Us that introduced the concepts of gap mending and Mend the Gap. And Power Us established the Mend the Gap approach in social work education, and it is built around a set of key principles. Whilst all Mend the Gap projects are different, for example, in terms of their participants, the issues they focus on, their length, the following core principles and features are always present. Firstly, projects are developed and focused around the common issues or gaps identified by a specific service user or carer group. Secondly, there is real co-production. Experts by experience of social problems and or social work services are involved as equal partners on equal terms and are equally valued, recognized, and respected alongside social workers, social work educators, social work students, and perhaps researchers or policymakers. Gaps are identified, explored and discussed, and plans are developed to find ways of mending them. It is a powerful vehicle for learning and development in social work education and social work practice. As a new way of learning and a new way of making change happen, it is formidable, it is strong and compelling, because it has the capacity to do many things. It has the capacity to bring previously separate groups together as one socially cohesive team, working hopefully in solidarity towards a common aim. It has the capacity to be led by the common issues or gaps identified by a specific service user or carer group. It has the capacity to create a learning environment where all people involved in the learning can participate equally and co-produce. It has the power to break down barriers between each person and group involved. It has the ability to develop mutual recognition for all individuals and groups. It has the ability to promote honesty, openness, and transparency. And there is more. It has the capacity to deeply and widely involve experts by experience as change agents. It has the power to lead to concrete learning. And finally, it has the capacity to be innovative and creative. And we will see that in presentations today. I believe it has the power to be a ground-up political movement for positive change. The process and outcomes of projects can challenge the status quo. They can challenge and change current systems and approaches in social work education and current systems and approaches in social work practice. They can challenge and change current government law and current government policy. My thoughts turn to the most recent Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities report, March 2021, chaired by Dr. Tony Sewell. It has been rightly controversial, rowing back on some of the government's previous March 2016 position. Page 4 in particular of that report, March 2021, makes very difficult reading when it says, put simply, we no longer see a Britain where the system is deliberately rigged against ethnic minorities. This shows a clear gap between government thinking, current government policy, and the lived experiences of critical major groups of citizens in society. But ever the optimist, who is, yes, interested in knowing and measuring the problems, I'm even more determined to find and pursue the solutions, the ways to challenge and reduce disadvantage, inequality, to challenge and reduce disparity and injustices, dare I say it, finding and closing the gaps. And with this attitude, I plucked two major gems from the ashes of this report. Page 7 of the report says, we increasingly felt that an unexplored approach to closing disparity gaps was to examine the extent individuals and their communities could help themselves through their own agency. This is a clear acknowledgement and a clear call for people to use our personal agency, our personal power, our voice, our ability to create change and influence things. As part of the solution, there is also a call on page 7 for greater participation. So let's get involved. When we stood in solidarity earlier, I have no idea how many of you actually did it because we were online. We were not in a room. Did you participate? And if you did it, with what level of unity, what level of commitment, What level of intensity? What level of determination? Everyone wants the truth, but who is determined to be honest? Archbishop Tutu said, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Our challenge is not just to see the light, but to be the light. Our challenge is not just to lead through giving a verbal example of our power, but by openly displaying the power of our example. Within Mend the Gap, we can come together, work together, learn together, dream together, take actions together, make change happen together. And to make change happen and to respond to change, we can join together for teaching, writing, campaigning, research, and, oh yes, learning. Benjamin Franklin said, tell me and I may forget. Teach me and I am likely to remember. But involve me and I am likely to learn. Zig Ziglar took this a step further when he said, if you are not willing to learn, no one can help you. But if you are determined to learn, nothing can stop you. Mend the Gap is a powerful, perhaps radical vehicle, a medium for wide and deep learning and structural change. We are not just passive agents, swept along and swept aside by powerful people, powerful systems and powerful institutions beyond our control. Sure, some things are stacked against us, but these structures are not beyond our reach, not beyond our ability to influence and change. We already have the support of our regulator, Social Work England. Their guidance clearly advises the use of co-production in social work education. And here's the thing. We must all remain students, open to challenge and new learning. And we must challenge each other. We must accept challenges from others and reflect with an open mind on them. We must all remain students, willing and if necessary and appropriate to change our mind in the light of new information, or should I say, in the light of new learning. And I'm now going to reveal myself for the final conclusion. So everything we have achieved has been achieved through struggle. Mend the Gap provides us with a powerful instrument for joining that struggle. And by working in solidarity and unity, participating together as one team, remaining open to new learning, combining our personal agencies, all our areas of expertise, willing to challenge and be challenged, we can and we must make a collective change in social work education and social work practice. Using a Mend the Gap approach, we can and we will make a collective difference. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you for that very detailed and passionate opening. You've highlighted how important co-production within social work is and the importance and the powerful nature of Mend the Gap. So without further ado, I will now pass it on to Shropshire Council and the University of Wolverhampton to introduce their project, which is the impact of Mend the Gap, in terms of direct payments on adult social work practice and teaching. So I'll hand it over to yourselves to introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Sukhbir.
You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. So Shropshire Council, in collaboration with University of Wolverhampton, delivered one of the Mend the Gap projects focusing on direct payments as part of West Midland Social Work Teaching Partnership Program. And today we are going to share the impact of the project. So my name is Mahuya. I am lecturer at the University of Wolverhampton, and I will request my fellow presenters, Lorraine, Tammy, and Beth, to introduce themselves very quickly.
I'm Lorraine Currie. I'm just going to apologise in advance that I've got builders replacing my roof, so you might get some noise in the background. I participated in this because I was acting principal social worker at the time. My normal role is the Mental Capacity Act lead for Shropshire Council, but I also manage a direct payment for my daughter.
Hello, good morning. My name's Beth Baker. I'm one of the leads for direct payments in Shropshire.
Good morning, my name's Tammy Doyle. I'm also one of the direct payment leads at Shropshire Council, and I job share with Beth Baker. So good morning, everyone.
Thanks. So just to give you a very brief overview of our Mend the Gap projects, which I said it was focusing on direct payment. So main focus of our Mend the Gap was to explore the gaps between experience of people using direct payments, practitioners who deliver direct payments, and knowledge gap of students who are in social work education. So 6 participatory sessions organized in between January and March to facilitate the discussions on bridging the gap, which Albert was mentioning, between current practice and process of DP system for council, direct payment system for council, and for social work education. So finding the knowledge gap between theory and practice. 26 people from different background and level of expertise, they actually actively participated in those sessions. And each session had different themes, which was decided by participants during the first sessions. And themes included support plan principles, Care Act eligibility criteria, support plans group work, importance of using right language, evidence of spending, and communication gaps. We had to cancel the last evaluation and celebration session because of COVID situation, but we did online evaluation meeting, which was organized later, and we will share a glimpse of that evaluation as well. And as part of the celebration, participants made clay tiles depicting what this Mend the Gap project meant for them. And you can see one of the amazing clay tile picture on the right-hand side. Next slide, please.
Hello. I just wanted to give a bit of sort of history of where we were and why we joined Mend the Gap. And we have to go back to 2019, way before sort of all the difficulties with COVID. And we were looking at a lot of changes to our direct payment offer. We set up a direct payment board, and that continues, and it's co-chaired by an expert by experience. We had an external direct payment service, and it was jointly agreed to decommission. And we brought the direct payment service in-house so that we could co-produce future changes. And we had 2 workshop sessions which were arranged in 2019 to rehumanise the system. so that we could identify gaps and hear different perspectives on direct payments from all those involved, from experts, carers, practitioners, finance staff. And we had 185 people attend these workshops, and they were jointly involved with Think Local, Act Personal. Many things came out of the workshop, but one of the common themes was about support planning and the need for them to be more creative and flexible, as well as identifying the tension around this with appropriate use of public funds, and that trust and better communication were key. Next slide, please. What we were hoping to achieve in terms of when we wanted to join Mend the Gap, we wanted to start an ongoing open conversation between Shropshire Council and Experts by Experience and all those involved to understand the gaps that had been identified during these events. And we wanted to talk about the so-called tricky issues, some of which we were already aware of, and to establish the areas where we could affect change. And there's some issues we couldn't change, obviously, in terms of the law. So we could agree how to improve our communication about them. And we wanted to share how each role involved understood their own and collective goals. So that would be the person, the expert, their family, the practitioner, student social workers, the manager, finance team, and the audit team. And to be able to see from each other's perspective was really important. And we wanted any changes that came out of this group to be real rather than symbolic or tokenistic, and we wanted to get there together. So we joined Mend the Gap, so we're together, we could identify, reflect and work through addressing these gaps around support planning together. Next slide, please. And I think that's yourself, Lorraine.
Yeah, so I mean, the Mend the Gap events, each session had its own kind of moment of revelation, but we learned so many different things together. We talked about the use of everyday language. You know, we explored why people might say something as ordinary as, oh, I went for a walk, but in a social work assessment, it might say she mobilised. You know, we looked at things like that kind of use of language. We looked at the same words that kept appearing around flexibility, choice, keeping things simple. We looked at eligibility, and this was a real kind of moment of revelation where the people who received direct payments realised that actually social workers had a set of criteria that they worked to, but that we weren't sharing that information. So the quote at the top was someone who said, imagine if you had an appraisal for a job without knowing what the job title was. And from their perspective, that's how it felt when they were being assessed, if you like, for their eligibility for adult social care. So we started to look at things and see, everyone started to see and realise each other's sides. So maybe people who sent out finance letters didn't intend them to be to come over as threatening or aggressive, but the people who received them were able to say, but that's how it felt to them. And the entire process was very complex. Next slide, please. So where we ended up really was the revelation that co-production was the key. And we produced together various things as a result of Mend the Gap. So we produced a new vision, which is what you can see on the right-hand side. The statements there about being open and honest, flexible and creative, clear and simple, all of this came as a product of Mend the Gap. And the jigsaw images are the tiles that Mo just referred to, and we use those to illustrate the vision. We created what we're very proud of and think's fairly unique, a co-produced direct payment policy, a new direct payment agreement. We reviewed and renewed all the letters that go out to people. So we just changed the language. How might the words unauthorised spend underlined in bold make someone feel? We produced a welcome pack, a guide to eligibility. We've got a website under construction, and we presented all of this back to people in 2 big sessions to launch this in March, just this March, just gone. Next slide, please. One of the most important things we produced, in my view, was this guide to eligibility. So after the moment of revelation and with the support from all of the people there who use social care, we created this guide which explains the eligibility areas, and then it actually is a booklet. So before an assessment now, some people can complete this with it's got a set of questions and a place to write in. This was a very real and tangible outcome from Mend the Gap. Next slide, please. That's Mo, I think.
Yes, thank you. So one of the main findings of this Mend the Gap project of social work education was that we need more focused teaching on direct payments and also eligibility criteria. Apart from that, we actually captured all the sessions and made a video, and that video, Mend the Gap direct payments video, became a fantastic teaching tool for us. And the teaching tool, the Mend the Gap video as a teaching tool, is not only for explaining what direct payments or what correct eligibility criteria is, but also around discussions about using the communication, I mean, right language, or the importance of communication, and also the importance of involvement of service users in improving services. So the Mend the Gap video is actually a fantastic teaching tool for us. And we have used the knowledge from this Mend the Gap as a skills day resource. And students actually loved the skills days. And that's according to the students, they said it was the best skills day ever for them. And I've added comments from one of the colleagues, Glenda, who have used this Mend the Gap video tool, and she clearly said how it's effectively helped to enable students reflect on the importance of language and also understanding relationship building. So it's a fantastic teaching tool. And also this is an example of participatory action research. So I have used the example on my research methods teaching even. And as it is a person-centered approach example as well. So we can use the tool and the report in so many ways. And one other dissemination, which I am currently involved in because I'm writing a book chapter on disability rights based on my experience. So the impact will go on actually. So we like to continue the impact on academia. So next slide, please.
So we just wanted to give you some feedback from the people who've been involved and the ongoing work. So this is a slide from one of the participants who is a young man who's recently moved to the Shropshire area, and he said there you can see working alongside a local authority who are so receptive to customer involvement is a new experience for me and one that has been wholly positive. When it's disabled people who use direct payments, it's been great to contribute to the shaping of the service for myself, but also on behalf of others. And the next slide you're going to watch is a recording which will explain one of the tiles. Hopefully it will have sound on. So it's going to explain the making of one of the tiles and actually what Mend the Gap meant to them. Okay, so hopefully, I mean, that short clip really says everything that Mend the Gap has meant, really, in our work since then. So I was just asked to say a little bit about how it's spread. And I think really that is around the ongoing work, the co-produced policy, but in particular, the piece of work on eligibility was not linked only to direct payments. This is now in use across the whole of adult social care. So, you know, we started off with a gap in one area, but the findings and the light bulb moment actually went right across adult social care. And also what we've learned about co-production is something that we will take forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so I hope we're just about on time. I think we've only got a summing up slide at the end. We did have a lot of material, as you can see, but I think there's just a few minutes here of the evaluation where the participants explained what it was like to be involved in Mend the Gap. So we'll just share that with you. Great stuff. Next slide. So I think really just in summing up, I would say, and I have said because I've written it on a slide, Mend the Gap was a timely vehicle. It gave us the space to come together and look at things from different angles. And it was that ability to look from different angles. You know, people hearing from audit, what they had to do and the pressures on them, and people hearing from people who rely on the direct payment to live. You know, we were just really people together in a room talking about our lives. And there's a little quote there from someone, and you can see their slide, someone who took part and then wasn't able to continue the work for us, with us at the end due to a period of illness. But she said there, I began to see the other pieces and experience that each Mend the Gap individual brought, how valid and important each missing or unconnected piece is. And I think maybe there's just an end slide, which is just a kind of a thank you, and the video link there that Mo has shared. And I think we're about 3 minutes before time, so I don't know if we're supposed to take questions, but if we are, then we're happy to.
Yeah,
that's the royal
right. we have got a few minutes, so I think there's one question which we can take, and we are a bit tight on time. There was one question within the chat asking about, let me just find it again, what difference, so this was from Mark, what difference has the Shropshire Direct Payments project made to the review process, if any?
Just explain what you mean by the review process, Mark.
Yes, so if Mark wants to come in. Hi, Mark.
Just that everyone has to go through a review every so often, every year, and I just wondered, has the project made any difference to that process?
Yeah, so I think that there's two bits really. So there's the kind of social work review of what your care plan looks like and whether that needs any change. And we're still working on that side of things. The other side is the annual review where kind of you send all your bits of paper in and that goes through a process, and the finance people check that. And we hope that we have made a big impact there, because that's been our kind of main focus really, on making that simpler and easier and more friendly. And obviously in many ways we've done the project and now we're at the start. So now we're at the start of saying this is all the changes that we've made together. Now we've got the hard bit, which is making it work in practice. So I really hope so, Mark, is the answer, because we've done what we can at this point in time, as far as we can, to simplify all those things that made it a real challenge for people. And we've got to work internally now, largely in Shropshire Council, I think, to say, no, that was that old way. This is how it's going to work now.
Okay.
Thank you. So thank you for that, guys. That was fantastic hearing what you guys have achieved really, and the impact that it's had and the outputs that you've created from the project. And for me, it's about now how do we share that learning across the region as well. I think that's really important. But thank you very much for your hard work, and I can't get over that tile. It was fantastic, wasn't it? Great. But I do want to see yours, Lorraine, because you said you don't want to show it.
Yeah, mine ended up looking like a pizza, and somehow it got lost along the journey. I don't know how. I won't say it was deliberate, but it got lost somewhere. But that was my daughter's, the one with the hand. But the other one that we just heard explained was brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic work. Thank you very much, guys, for your hard work. Okay, so now if there's any questions that people have along the way, obviously we've got very limited time, but if you want to type it in the chat, then maybe someone from the group, the specific group, can reply to that. Is that okay? But if we have a few minutes in between each sort of project, then I will try and get a question in if I can. Okay, so thank you very much, guys. So over over to the next project. So this is Birmingham City University that are now going to be speaking. So this was a citizen group. And I'm going to hand it over to Albert. So this was carers of people who have received a diagnosis of learning difficulties and or learning disabilities. So over to yourself, Albert, and your team. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Sukhvir. I would like to introduce you to a Mend the Gap project that took place at Birmingham City University between December 2019 and March 2020. The project was focused on gathering information on the gaps that exist for carers. And these were carers of people who have received a diagnosis of learning disabilities. We wanted to discuss and understand these gaps and then co-produce ways of mending them. We actually had 14 people involved. There was one facilitator, myself, and there were 4 main groups. And the groups were, we had 5 carers of people who had received a diagnosis of learning disabilities, 4 social work students, 2 professional social work practitioners from one of our main practice partners, Birmingham City Council, and we had 2 social work academics from Birmingham City University. Now, here we are on our final day, receiving our Mend the Gap certificates. Let me just show this to you. There we are. And what we did was we identified gaps and then we planned to mend those gaps. So some of the main gaps and some of the main plans we had were as follows. One of the first gaps that was identified was that carers do not always know or understand the role of social workers. So our plan was to design a sophisticated media campaign to explain the role of the social worker in England. A second gap that was identified was that many social workers do not have up-to-date knowledge of what community resources are available in the area in which the citizen lives. So our plan was to develop an app that provides current and relevant and accessible information for the social worker, the carer, and the cared for person. And if I just come back to you here, a third gap that we identified was that some social workers do not adequately understand different types of learning difficulties or different types of learning disabilities. They do not know how to develop and maintain high-quality empathic relationships with carers. And some social workers do not know how to be truly person-centered. So our plan was to enhance social work education through equally involving carers, social work practitioners, and social work academics in co-producing and delivering relevant training. Unfortunately, a worldwide pandemic came along, so we didn't get an opportunity yet to develop our plans further. But I'm going to now pass you to each of our groups who are involved, starting with our carers.
Hello, my name's Jane and I'm mum to George, who's 23. When I was first asked to join the project, I was quite sceptical, as historically our experience with social workers had not been a positive one. Thankfully, I did join the Mend the Gap project, where I met a group of enthusiastic, like-minded people. Hearing the experiences of social workers opened my eyes, and I like to think that hearing our experiences opened their eyes too. My analogy is that we're singing from the same hymn sheet, we're just singing a different tune. The social work students were an incredible mix of people whose enthusiasm was really encouraging. They listened and took this project on board. With such a mixed age range, it was interesting to see where this project would take us. and it took us down the technology route with the idea of a simple app. One touch and you have everything you need to guide your young people or people with learning disabilities to what would be available to them in the local area. We were then hit with a totally unexpected pandemic. So if this group were to run again, I feel the outcomes would be very different. Zoom isn't for everyone. A whole new way of connecting with people would need to be considered. On a positive note, as a group, I hope we get to move forward with our ideas and plans, because without a doubt, we can make a difference to people's lives given the opportunity. Determination is what is needed, and our group has it in abundance. And Albert, I want to help to make change happen. This was my experience of the Mend the Gap project. Now over to Sharda.
Sharda, you're currently on mute.
Voice call. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, Sharda.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm just sorting out the mic. 1 minute.
Sharda, could you please mute yourself, and we will move to our next carer, please. Thank you.
Good morning, delegates. My name is Margaret. I am a parent. I have worked as a teacher. I work as a mentor in youth offending and relocation, and I also support as a befriender of young adults that have experienced the care system with learning difficulties. I was attracted to Mend the Gap because my view is, like Mind the Gap, unless you fall into the gap, you don't really understand what the gap is. As the project, we were invited along as parents. We were able to discuss issues that we had experienced both ourselves and from supporting other parents. Sorry, the social need gap is also a gap that exists, but the gap only has clarity when you're looking to find a way out of it. Learning difficulties, we can see through COVID, has absolutely widened since COVID. We find that people who should have had support haven't been able to access any of that support, so therefore their expectations have been lowered. We've also, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Different aspects of the pitfalls that exist can fail to close the gap and leave members of society behind socially, economically, and with lower life expectancy. Our project was a first step in discussing this as a group from different aspects of working or living within it. We explored the barriers and the misconceptions, and we identified modules for future training that hopefully would be incorporated and be instrumental in change. We also looked at where things don't work cohesively between multidisciplinary teams and how a social worker's role might help make these cogs work closer and better together. We looked at possible steps for collaboration, and we all agreed that we felt that this was a first step, that more work was needed, and it just warrants further work. Sorry about that, I just got a little bit lost. I'll hand you over now to Sally. Thank you, Sally.
Thanks, Margot. I'll jump in while Shada's getting her IT sorted.
Yeah, I've got it, Sally. It's all sorted now. Thank you very much. It's okay.
I'll carry on with Shada
Thank
then.
you, Sally. Thank you very much. Sorry, my apologies for that. It's computers, right? Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharda Lavingia, and I'm a full-time carer. And I also teach mindfulness and a casual worker at BCU. I have had a lot of experience with social worker service since I'm a full-time carer. So I was very much interested when the opportunity came to join Mind the Gap. I had the most wonderful time and met lovely people who became friends and colleagues. In Mind the Gap project, we had BCU staff, adult social worker, students, and carers like ourselves. I learned so much under the leadership of Albert, as he was so patient and understanding. I felt my voice was heard, and I felt I was able to contribute. My confidence grew, and going into the BCU initially was a lovely experience. It was great to share my experience being a carer for my family and a friend, and coming from an ethnic background. From our project, Mind the Gap, as a carer, I am also sharing my experience with organization. Some are also following the same as expert by experience carers involvement. And thank you very much. And I would like to welcome Sally. Welcome, Sally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sally. I'm a mum of 4 amazing children, 2 who have autism and 1 who has a learning disability. I joined Mend the Gap project as a parent carer, and I had absolutely no preconceived ideas. It was a room with us, parent carers, student social workers, social work educators, and social workers who are out in practice. As a project team, we all got to learn about each other as people and about their roles. We had some laughs, and actually we did shed some tears. And that was because over the weeks our roles merged. Over time, we were people who had the same passion, the same drive, and similar frustrations, and together we wanted to improve the services. As a parent carer, I felt safe and welcome to share my thoughts. And that caused the things because of Albert. I think he helped facilitate this. And I shared my concerns about I didn't quite understand social workers' role, the inconsistencies in information and process, and the low vision and aspirations and creativity for people with learning disabilities in their education, in their work, in their opportunities to have just a standard social life like any of us, generally compounded by the limited awareness of the actual services and provision that actually is out there. And this was listened to and understood. I found it a real eye-opener to hear how things were from the other perspectives, and this meant we all genuinely shared ideas to make things move forward. I have now got a real insight, and I feel so that the social workers in practice, the social workers in education, and the social work students do too. Even though this has been like a year like no other, and a year since this project nearly concluded, the barriers and challenges have remained the same, but the gaps have got deeper and deeper. The next stage, as it seems to me, is that our Mend the Gap team should take forward our suggestions, and we can be involved internally in shaping practice, process, system and structures together, both in the social work community and in the social work education. And of course, I look forward to seeing a Mend the Gap project where those with learning disabilities use their own voice to identify further gaps. Thank you. Over to Tracy.
Thank you, Sally. Hi everyone, I'm Tracy and I'm mother to 4 incredible children. Dominic is my youngest son. He's now 24 and he was diagnosed at the age of 23 months with autism. Being asked to be part of the Mend the Gap project, I felt honoured to be able to share my experiences with social workers and knowing that these experiences would help shape upcoming social workers in the future. My son has very little communication skills, so I am not just his mom and his carer, I am also his voice and his advocate, which I felt was extremely important to the group. The Mend the Gap project members welcomed and valued my input and opinions, which made me feel able to be more honest about what I thought was working well, and working as a team, we were able to find solutions to where the gaps were and how things could be improved for families and social workers of the future. The app seemed a simple idea, and we all thought this was a fantastic one. Also, to promote the positive involvement of social workers would be amazing, because social workers, they work extremely hard, and I know that from experience myself. I always came away feeling empowered, and that what we had discussed will make a difference to both families and social workers. I feel that more Mend the Gap projects would help to ensure that these areas that we identified are revisited, to try and make sure that the gaps aren't forgotten and grow bigger. I would love to be involved with any Mend the Gap projects within the future. We will now hear from the qualified social work practitioners who were involved in our project. So it's over to you guys. Thank you.
Hello, Shabnam. Janine, would you like to speak, please?
Hi, yes, thank you. Just give me a second. Yeah, hello. In the Mend the Gap project, it was good to talk and share experiences with carers outside of the social work assessment role. It meant we were able to talk to each other as equals without the carers feeling they were being judged. I learned a lot from their expertise and the impact their experience of social workers and services had on them. The project enabled us to understand each other better and for me to keep in mind what they said to inform my own practice. Students come from a fresh perspective and help me to see things in a different way. It was great to explore with students and academic staff about how we can make good social work practice happen with carers of adults with learning disabilities. The best thing about the project was people coming together from different roles and perspectives to work through issues and come up with ideas. As a working model, there was real partnership working and real exchange of information and ideas. So going forward with Mend the Gap, not only did we learn from carers about their own role, they also gave us a better understanding of the lives of their relatives with learning disabilities whom they care for. In general, I think social workers need more training to work more effectively with people with learning disabilities, and some of that training should be provided by people with learning disabilities themselves. Similarly, social workers could have better links with learning disability advocacy, as people with learning disabilities still don't have enough say in their own lives. Resources are an issue. It is increasingly harder for social workers to secure larger packages of long-term funding. The cutting of resources then puts pressure back onto carers. The collaborative approach taken in Mend the Gap can help tackle the issue of resources for carers and people with learning disabilities. I think if we value carers, then Mend the Gap should continue and maybe include people with learning disabilities as well, and also focus on the specific needs of Black and Asian carers, for example. Mend the Gap would also need to have more weight and influence if it is to lead to the changes that people really want and need. Thank you, and I now pass you on to Shabnam.
Mend the Gap discussions were really helpful and beneficial for me as a social worker. Everyone was able to express their views in a safe environment where there was no power difference. It was good to hear from everyone their personal experience of having a social worker and accessing services. Frank discussions were had about barriers they experienced and the difficulties they had with their social workers. As practitioners, we also expressed about our role and how our organisation had changed in terms of processes and what restrictions we had in terms of services. I have learned so much from Mend the Gap, as it has helped me to understand what carers and citizens found important to them and what attributes they would like the social worker to have. I was able to understand what were the barriers to communication and how to improve this. I have prior knowledge of services available in the community and the challenges student social workers have on placement. As a practice educator, it has helped me to understand how best to support my student on placement and to help them have better relationship with working with families. What I would take forward from Mend the Gap as a social work practitioner and was also highlighted in our discussions is that more training should be available about learning disability and autism. Better relationship with carers is needed. There also needs to be better links with the Carers Hub. It would also be beneficial if we had more information on what carers can get in their own right, so social workers are better briefed to encourage uptake of carers assessment. The public would also need to be better informed of changes to processes, such as the free conversations, in order to alleviate any barriers and confusion citizens and carers may have. During our conversations, lecturers were able to identify the gaps and had suggestions to implement their teaching programme. Student social workers highlighted that not is known enough about learning disability and autism. Moving forward, it would be beneficial to have training available to staff and academic teaching to students going on to placement. It would be good if carers and citizens were involved in this. Our students will now present.
So could our students from BCU please present? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patrice Mendez, student social worker on placement. Being a part of Mend the Gap has helped to inform my practice whilst on placement in a positive way. It has enabled me to work in collaboration with service users with lived experience. Hearing from carers whilst being on Mend the Gap about the struggles they face when engaging with services has informed my practice positively. Therefore, for social workers and social work training to go forward positively, the involvement of people with lived experiences from BAME and ethnic minority to be a part of whatever academic is offered. Albert, the lead for the project, has helped me to build confidence as a BAME person while being on Mend the Gap. Mend the Gap going forward helped me to practice anti-oppressively. It has informed my practice, it has informed my own personal identity and informed my unconscious and conscious bias when engaging with service users and people in my personal life. Going forward, I'd like to, whatever we have developed from Mend the Gap, I'd like to be a part of it to inform change within society for people with lived experience, but especially for people from a Black and ethnic minority group, as they are less represented within society. Thank you. I'll pass to Anthony.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Anthony Toole, and I'm a student social worker. Mend the Gap has been a great opportunity for me as a student to gain an insight into carers' experiences. Prior to coming to university, I'd worked in care and had family caring responsibilities. However, I believe I maybe lost sight of the inequalities and the gaps within society and social work provision. This may have been due to the many years I'd worked in care and not having the chance to speak to carers on a personal level and build a relationship with them. Being a part of the Mend the Gap project has opened my eyes and helped me to not lose sight of what is important, which is working together and listening to carers' experiences as well as service users. It is about when you have identified a gap and you're trying to do something about it. I'm proud to be a part of this group and proud that we have accomplished this. When I started this journey with the Mend the Gap project, I was in year 1 at university and I've been on placement. I'm now in year 2 and halfway through my first placement. I truly believe that working with the carers, my fellow students and lecturers, it has helped me to gain a different perspective with people's lives. This opportunity has helped build my confidence, which I have taken into my practice on placement. I would encourage future students to take part in possible projects as it was a positive learning experience. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Colin. I'm one of the 2 social work educators that participated in this particular project. Simon Hall was the other. We often think of ourselves and our activities as rooted in our particular location, where we live, work, our region, and this of course is the West Midlands Regional Teaching Partnership Conference. Occasionally though, it's important to look to the horizon to get a different perspective and to see where we fit. How about a global perspective? The International Federation of Social Workers, the IFSW, is the global body for the profession, and it's come up with a definition of what it thinks social work is. Now, some of you will be familiar with this. I'm going to read this. Social work is a practice-based profession and an academic discipline that promotes social change and development, social cohesion, and the empowerment and liberation of people. It goes on. Principles of social justice, human rights, collective responsibility, and respect for diversities are central to social work. Underpinned by theories of social work, social sciences, humanities, and indigenous knowledge, social work engages people and structures to address life challenges and enhance well-being. Now, in the commentary to this definition, the Federation has described the knowledge that informs our work and suggests how traditionally we've borrowed from other human sciences, including sociology, psychology, psychiatry, education, and public health. Increasingly though, it's recognised that social work is developing its own knowledge base, and that the uniqueness of this is that it's applied, what the Federation describes as emancipatory or liberating, and that much of this is actually co-constructed with service users and carers in an interactive dialogic process informed by specific practice environments. Now, this very much describes Mend the Gap for me. As a social work educator now, I believe social work should engage people and structures to address life challenges and enhance well-being, and that social work supports working with rather than for people. Now, this for me, and for my colleague Simon, is the main learning from Mend the Gap. And this project then has been about knowledge generation for practice that supports strategies aimed at increasing people's hope, self-esteem, and creative potential to confront and challenge oppressive power dynamics and structural sources of injustice. The project was underpinned by a respect for and a celebration of diversity, and it has been emancipatory. It's challenged some established and unhelpful power dynamics, and I believe that it's unlocked creative potential by taking each of us out of the boxes we usually operate within. It removed some of the barriers between us and enabled us to hear each other and to talk as equals. We each had the experience then of being on a shared journey and of walking alongside each other, literally at the Botanic Gardens and metaphorically. It's been really good to be a part of the project and to get to know each other better. This, I believe, is the potential of Mend the Gap, and it's the contribution that social work offers the other human sciences I mentioned earlier. As Margaret noted very succinctly earlier, if we ignore the gap, we'll fall into it. and will fail to address people's life challenges and enhance their well-being. More than this, though, we're likely to sustain injustices, deepen inequalities, and buttress oppressive power structures. So, going forward, can we take learning from this particular project and apply it in meaningful ways? I believe we can, absolutely. As social work educators who enjoy the privilege of being a part of this particular project, Simon and I anticipate the lessons we've learned shaping the curriculum at BCU through how we understand and design it, how we deliver it, and how we evaluate and review it. The project has encouraged and enabled us, therefore, to ask ourselves again whether what we do contributes to mending or widening gaps. Albert, back to you.
Thank you very much, Colin. And I would also like to thank our carers, our practitioners, and our students. This is the end of the presentation from the Birmingham City University team. Thank you very much, Mend the Gap, for this opportunity.
Thank you, everyone. That was fantastic. You've obviously worked really well together and learnt so much from each other. And hopefully you can take some of your findings forward as well. So that's great. Thank you very much. We're running a little bit over time, so I know there's one question within the chat, but if someone in terms of a practitioner could answer that within the chat, it's Reshma who's asked a question. That would be great if you could just type a response within the chat. That would be fab. Okay, so moving on to our next project. So this is by Cheshire East Council, and this project was on adults with learning disabilities in a community setting. So over to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your invite today. Just bear with me 2 seconds. I'm just trying to share for you. So thank you for your invite today. My name is Sarah Jacqueline, and I'm the local area coordinator for the Adult Social Care, Learning Disability and Transition team from Cheshire East Council. And with me today is Christian Bellis, who is a student social worker on his first placement with us from Manchester University. Myself and Chris would love to share with you how Cheshire East Council got involved with Mend the Gap and working with our adults across the borough with learning disabilities that access our services. So, how did we start this journey? Well, it started with an invite being sent out. Visits to meet everyone were set up in community settings. We wanted to make sure that our people we were meeting were in a setting where they felt comfortable and safe, and that they could talk and share with us their thoughts and views. This was really important. So we talked, we listened, we got involved in the groups that we attended. We met up with our people who access services at the Rossendale Trust Oakwood Activity Service. We spoke to them at their drama group session, joined in and asked questions during their break. We also went to Cheshire East Day Service, Carter House, where we joined in with a sing and sign session, and during the break we chatted to our people who were in attendance, asking lots of questions. Finally, we went to one of our new supported living settings, Valleybrook Court, and we sat in one of their communal kitchen areas where residents came and talked to us. Some of the parents who were visiting their loved ones joined in too. There was lots of cakes eaten, I have to say, and tea and coffee and juice drank during this time, but it really was fabulous.
We managed to get a really good insight with the adults we spoke to and their thoughts by asking 3 questions. 1, who was their social worker? 2, when they speak to their social worker, do they feel they're listened to and what really matters to them? And 3, what do they enjoy doing in their community, and most importantly, are they happy? By talking, we hope to understand their point of view better, and that in turn, listening and finding out their answers could possibly lead to changes going forward. And we were only at the very beginning of rolling out the Mend the Gap project when the pandemic stopped us in our tracks. But from the questions we asked before the pandemic, we managed to learn lots from our people. But the voice of our people is not always heard, and this has meant that participants received vastly different levels of care and support, and as such became disillusioned with the quality of social care engagement they received. Also, that the turnover rate of the social workers, and this was highlighted where the participants stated that they either didn't know who their social worker was or that they had not heard from them in over a year. And also that family and carers often feel they aren't involved in the essential decisions, and this to them was around the well-being and care of the individual with the learning disability.
So, what have we done so far? Well, we're already pleased to say that our Director of Adult Social Care, Jill Broomhall, is now the Chair of the Learning Disability Partnership Board that is being run quarterly to hear the views from our adults, provider partners, community groups, and our carers and families. And as we move forward, and already in place are subgroups that work in line with the Learning Disability and Partnership Board. We have self-advocate groups both in the east and south of our Cheshire East Borough, led by our adults with learning disabilities so that they can talk about what's really important to them. We're also moving forward with a carers group, and this includes our young carers, our old carers. This includes all of our carers that want to be involved, and we have a provider group as well. We want everyone's voice to be heard, but there is still lots more to do, and we will do it. We would love you to meet some of our residents and their friends that allowed us to come and have those conversations with them about the Mend the Gap project. We hope you enjoy the next few slides, which we have asked them to share with you, the projects they get involved with within their community, the activities and the social groups, days out, and everything that makes them smile. So this is a massive shout out to the Rossendale Trust, First Enable and Carter House. Thank you for letting us show everyone what you do and how brilliant you are.
If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. Find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, yeah. If you're tossing and you're turning and you just can't fall asleep, I'll sing a song beside you. And if you ever forget how much you really mean to me, every day I will remind you. Oh, find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count.
As a student social worker in my first ever placement, coming into this project has highlighted that despite all of our person-centred, strengths-based and inclusive values, there are still gaps between us as social workers and our people. Speaking of the term our people, this has stuck with me since working on this project with Sarah. Sarah speaks and acts so passionately about inclusivity, often stressing her dislike of terms such as service users and clients. And I agree, our people don't just use our services, nor are they just clients, which insinuate that they're somehow customers. This type of language, which is all too common, can unknowingly push us as social workers further away from our people, increasing that gap we seek to mend. By continuing Mend the Gap projects in the future, this will carry on spreading the awareness of the real lived gaps that our people experience and feel between themselves and their social workers. And this increased awareness is fundamental in ensuring these gaps disappear.
As a local area coordinator, I work closely with our social workers, and I am classified as a social care assessor. But I work with our social workers and especially with our people, families and carers to support them in mending that gap. The Care Act has highlighted that people should have access to information and more choice and control. It has become massively important and an integral part of the social care service that we offer as a local authority. Finally, we would like to take this opportunity to thank a few really key people. Firstly, a massive thank you to Tom, who is someone that accesses services through Cheshire East and lives in one of our first enabled supported living settings, as he has a learning disability himself. Tom has put this presentation together for us. He is so talented and he wanted to be with us today, but he can't be because unfortunately his laptop has broken and he's trying to get it replaced. But he is also the chair of one of our self-advocate groups as part of the Learning Disability Partnership Board. I also need to mention a special thanks to some of the original members who got this project started at the beginning. And they were Alina George, who was one of our social workers under the Learning Disability team. During the pandemic, her partner had to move away from Cheshire East and she had to go with him, but is now with another local authority in Devon, near the sea, lucky thing. She was the main facilitator for this group. I also need to thank John Paul King from Staffordshire University and his students he brought with him to the groups we attended. He was another key person in this project. Last but not at all least, Alex, who we support within the adult social care setting, and he lives in another supported living in Sandbach area, and he was very much part of this project group too. He came with us to all of our visits within the different community settings, and he was fundamental in starting to ask those questions and get those conversations going, and he had plenty of jokes to share with us along the way, so we would like to thank him for all of his help too. As we come to the end of the presentation today, we hope that you have found it useful, and we would like to thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that. Another very passionate project and lots of learning that we can all take away from this. And I really, really enjoyed that video. So did Tom do all of that video as well?
Yeah, he did.
Excellent work. He can come and do some work for us. That was absolutely brilliant. So thank him for that. I know he's not here today. And we've actually finished a little bit early, so we have got a bit of time for questions. So we are breaking for lunch about 12:15 until 12:45. So we've got about 15 minutes. If anyone wants to ask any questions about any of the projects that they've heard today, now's your opportunity. And we have had a few questions within the chat, but I think people have been responding to those within the chat themselves. So if anyone wants to turn off turn off their mute and ask a question, you're more than welcome. So I'll just open it up to everyone.
Hi. I just wanted to ask Birmingham really about the app and whether they can sort of share more information so that other local authorities can learn from them.
Okay, so who's speaking, sorry?
Sorry, it's Tammy Doyle and I'm from Shropshire Council.
Okay, if we can go over to the BCU project, I don't know whether Albert, you or one of your team members wants to respond to that question about the app. I'm not sure Albert's there, or if anyone else from that group wants to respond about the app, that would be great.
Yeah, can I come in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Sharda living here.
Hi,
I'm one of the member in the carer. We were discussing about the app, right? But because of this COVID-19,
right,
as you can see, we didn't even have our conference face to face, and it's a bit very upsetting, you know.
Yeah.
So this will be like a second stage. We'll look into that. So we are discussing about it. So as soon as we have some progress, we'll inform you. Thank you very much for your question, and I'm sure we will take your name and details, and I'm sure Albert will reply to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharda, for that update. So by the looks of it, it's an idea that you came up with, but it hasn't been progressed because of COVID and so forth, but
yes,
it's next stage. Yeah, thank you, Sharda.
Albert can update on that. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, Sukhvir, that we're very happy to receive questions. We will definitely respond.
Okay.
I wanted to reaffirm that our project was stopped in April of last year. We finished early April, and we've not been able to resume until we got a request from the teaching partnership to put together a presentation.
Yeah.
So very much appreciate the questions, and please keep them coming.
Thank you, Albert. So if anyone else wants to ask a question, please do so. I'll just check the chat as well. But you're more than welcome to talk if you want to unmute yourselves. No? Okay. I don't think there's anyone else there's nothing else in the chat, and no one's got their hands up or asking a question. So I think that we will probably end it there. We have got a little bit of a break now, so if you're going to be remaining with us for the second part of the session today, then what I would just do, instead of coming back into the session, just turn your cameras off and put yourselves on mute, and then you can just return to the session, which starts at 12:45. That's correct, isn't it, Adam? I've got that correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. So if there's anything in between sort of now and the break, because sometimes when you're on a break, a question might come up, please do write it in the chat, and then the appropriate people can respond to that question. Okay, so we will see you at 12:45. Enjoy the sun. I know the sun's out here for me, so I might have a bit of a walk around the block to get some vitamin D. So enjoy lunch, and we'll see you at 12:45. Thank you.